Okay, well, now that lunch is over, I know it's kind of a really difficult speaking time, so I'm going to go really fast. I'm going to warn you, and I want to do a little of blue sky thinking here, okay? So, think about for a minute that you've just received an email from the UN, and they've appointed you to be in charge of colonizing Mars, all right? Mr. Musk, he's going to provide the transport. M&S, they're going to, expend their flight service, and you are going to be in charge of operations. You've got to recruit 250,000 people and make them successful on Mars. So what do you need to think about to be able to do that? Well, first of all, you need to think about the technology, and I'm not talking about phasers and teleport systems. What people are going to need to use needs to be simple, fast and easy to use, flexible, mobile, and most importantly, it needs to allow people to communicate and work however they'd like. You're also going to have to think about creating the right environment for these people. You need to shape a physical space that's going to allow people to co-create and work and be creative together, because ultimately they have some very difficult challenges they're going to have to face, and you've got to get it right. Next, you're going to have to consider about creating some sort of positive, innovative culture. And this is where a whole range of people can coexist, collaborate, and work towards a shared purpose, because their survival is going to depend on it. And finally, you're going to need to start recruiting. But what do you think about, and where are you going to find these people? Well, first of all, I'd hope that at this day and age, you'd be looking for a 50-50 male and female split. But then you also need to start looking for people who have different perspectives, experiences, and skill sets. All of these things are logical. So where would you go? You need to go to the wide population. Now let's think at the same challenge and apply it here at the UK business landscape. Our challenge is actually remarkably similar. But that 250,000 people, that is the number of people that we need today that are missing with digital skills. And the people that we need to recruit, they are moving to an unknown future, one that is accelerating towards us. Now, if you observe the rate of technology as it's been adopted in the past, scientist Ray Kurzweil coined the term the law of accelerating returns. And simply this means technological progress, it basically doubles every decade. But does there come a point where acceleration goes exponential? Well, I think that time may be here. If Ray's law continues to hold true, we are looking at 200 centuries of progress in this particular century. And while we humans are great at adapting to change, we do it in a very linear fashion. So if you're facing exponential growth, we have got to move away from that linear, straightforward, traditional thinking, or we're going to be in trouble. So how do we create the right teams that can accelerate us to the future? Well, that 250,000 gap that I mentioned earlier, it's only getting bigger. Predictions are by 2022, 1.2 million people are going to need those digital critical skills. And why is it getting bigger? Because we keep stealing each other's people, And, it's even becoming more important because those digital skills are now needed against a breadth of industry lines. So what is the effect of this? Wage inflation, increasing cost, lack of innovation, and the UK business competitiveness reduces against global competition. This is just not sustainable. So we need to find and train new people. Now, I often hear complaints the government isn't doing enough. I think the government's a little bit busy trying to figure out how we're going to fit within the global workforce. But they were quite good about trying to insist that computing went back into the schools, and this is the first year that we've been able to produce more and an increasing computer science grads. But those numbers are just not going to make up the difference. And for the people who are already in their jobs, they don't have the skills to continue with what they're doing. In fact, a recent report says that in taking the 10% that they get today for time for job training, it actually needs to be over 20% just to remain competitive for the job as it is today. So luckily, there's lots of different pioneers out there, and I want to share a few organizations that I'm familiar with. Now, the Ftm Group, it's a FTSE 250 traded company. They globally recruit and train thousands of people in technical skills and then place them in industry. I'm also a non-executive director on their board. Whether it's taking UK graduates, ex-military personnel, people who've been away from the workforce, or people who want to retrain, by giving them these technical skills that match up with market demand, they can place their graduates in 2-year permanent jobs. Before I joined Citrix, we were having this conversation, I worked at Vodafone, and they're also throwing their resources out there into trying to reach the new segments within the workforce. They have their Reconnect program, which is trying to get 1,000 women to be retrained and brought into the organization to improve their customer service, to diversify their thought in business intelligence programs, and to diversify and to expand their management and their operational talent. And Goldman Sachs, they're running a global initiative called 10,000 Women that train women entrepreneurs around the world in business, technical, and management skills. I serve on the board of a university that actually trains a lot of these participants, mainly in emerging markets. And one of the things that they always talk about as being the most meaningful is when they get the training on the technical skills and for the applications that are relevant for their mid-sized businesses. But this is just the beginning. Now, we all know that the shape of the working population is changing. People are living and working longer, and immigration rates are slowing. So if we're going to solve the shortage of critical talent, we're going to have to widen our reach into the workforce, upskill, retrain, and once they're ready, we need to welcome them into our organizations. So we're going to have to attract lots of new people from all walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds, and you have to attract them in different ways. So those success factors that I talked about on Mars, well, it seems that they're the same success factors here in Earth. Jacob Morgan, he's a well-known futurologist, and he talks about needing 3 elements that you got to get right. Unsurprisingly, technology, your physical space, and culture help you create engaged teams. Let's start with technology. Now, when I started out, you would spend 24/7 in the office because that's where you could access the absolute best tools and technology. And today, what people have in their personal lives is infinitely better than anything we ever had. The workforce of today wants high performance, super easy tools in their jobs. And when those devices, the tools, and the platforms do not work, it usually also is a breakdown of other things within the organization, including human relationships. If you get this right, you will have an engaged workforce. But tech alone doesn't do it. You also need to create the right physical space. Now at Citrix, we've coined a phrase, work is not a place. It's because we believe work is an activity, and we want our people to be able to do it and perform it anywhere and however they like. Which doesn't mean that we're getting rid of offices. But offices are actually evolving into what we call employee experience centers. Now, Morgan identified 21 different workplace activities that employees go through. Everything from, large meetings, individual study time, taking a break. And you wouldn't expect to be effective if you did all of that in the same place. So we've taken these design principles, applied them to our own physical offices, and I can tell you, it works. In our recent employee surveys, Citrix now ranks in the top 3% globally of companies who've developed experiential businesses. And finally, culture. Now, with a workforce that's spanning generations, I know a lot's been written about the differences of these 5 different generations. But perhaps maybe we need to focus on what do they have more that's in common. Research shows that flexibility, satisfaction, and recognition are the key drivers of a motivated workforce, regardless of age. And so by introducing new working practices, providing training, and instilling confidence to take advantage of these opportunities, this is what each generation will derive. And I really can't underestimate what confidence means in a workforce, because when you're trying new skills, this is difficult. In fact, as our part of the move to the cloud at Citrix, we had to inject 2 new corporate core values, curiosity and courage. Because by creating these safe environments for people to learn, try new things, fail before you succeed, you can develop a culture that talks to all the generations. Now, 25 years ago, 8 scientists entered a self-sustaining environment, which they were there for a 2-year period for an experiment in preparation for space living called the biosphere. And I was attending university, my graduate studies in Arizona, and I went out to visit the place. They definitely had the right technology. They definitely had the right physical space. But they failed miserably on the cultural aspect. The stories about the infighting and the lack of alignment on the mission are legendary. So there's one element of culture that you really need to pay attention to. Culture that embodies a reason for being is ultimately what connects people to an organization. And by finding and communicating a common sense of purpose that talks to everyone, regardless of generation, your team can face the accelerating unknown. And with that, your multi-generational mission has begun. And by the way, if you would still prefer the challenges of Mars to the UK, the Mars One Foundation is still taking applications for its human settlers in their exploits in 2033. Really. So, whichever you choose, I wish you the best in that realm. Thank you.
I know, Michelle, if you just stand there for one sec, I know you're in a major rush, that's what I was going to say. Michelle's got to go and do another presentation. But have we just got one question from the floor? Okay, the lady there?
Yeah, you're talking about workspaces and how to create a workspace that works for meetings and what does that look like?
Like I said, Jacob Morgan came up with 21. In our offices, I think I can only really count about 10 or 11. But what you would have is you have workspaces, collaboration booths, individual study areas, a library, open plan seating, conference centers, you need a kitchen, sofa areas for people to relax. It's not all about bean bags and fun and games and things. It is how you want to be able to pick up and move to a different space to have a different collaboration or to have some quiet time. And that's how it works for us.
Excellent. Michelle, thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers. Thank you.